Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me in the record room today for another installment of Reggae Spinout, records either new to the collection or that have seen a listen again recently with an accent on the reggae genre. I want to take a moment and thank everybody who tuned into my recent spotlight on Delroy Williams, a Jamaican artist, passed away not too long ago, maybe not known to very many, but mainly familiar through his work with the great Augustus Pablo. Quite a kind, humble, and caring individual, according to all who knew him. A Canadian reggae researcher, Dave Kingston, recalls walking into a bar in downtown Kingston, Jamaica with Delroy sometime in the early 1980s, most likely, and walking into the middle of a knife fight between two men. They were squared off with knives drawn, ready to battle each other. Delroy Williams defusing the situation with just two words to the combatants, "just cool," causing them to back off. In such respect and regard he was held in the downtown Kingston community in which he lived. Unfortunately, many more music passings since then. Just recently, member of the Selector, Arthur Gaps Hendrickson, passed away. Also, French artist Francois Hardy, only one I have by her, compilation from the 1960s, and sadly there are some more reggae passages to make note of in just a moment. Jamaican singer Clive Hylton passed away June 1st. He was also known as Color Red, having a later second career under that name. Don't think I have any of his music as Color Red in my collection, but he had started out recording a song for Lee Scratch Perry in Jamaica in the 1970s called Judgment Day. That song can be found on a compilation called The Black Ark Presents Rastafari Liveth Itinually, Judgment Day by Clive Hylton. That's on Justice League. See, compilation from 1990s, early 2000s-ish, I think it originally came out. Great compilation of Lee Perry Black Ark nuggets. Good sound quality on this too. But it was another song that he recorded with Lee Perry that would arguably give Clive Hylton greater notoriety. It was recorded as a dub plate, an exclusive for UK sound system operator Lloyd Coxon, only to be played on his Coxon International sound system in Great Britain. The song was called Judgment Day. For many years, it wasn't quite known who sang it. Very heavy, very foreboding song. Was finally reissued on 12-inch in the early 2000s by Trojan Records, part of a reissue series they were doing at the time. Clive Hylton with From Creation, a dub version on the flip, but that was not commercially released at the time in the 1970s. It was a dub plate exclusively for play on Lloyd Coxon's sound system, though a dub version of it would crop up on Lee Perry's masterpiece Super Ape under the name of Underground, the rhythm track of From Creation by Clive Hylton. That song would later be covered by Barry Brown and Don Carlos, who had another hit with it in 1984. But Clive Hylton's own career itself left somewhat in obscurity until achieving a second later act as Color Red, and he would even revisit that From Creation track later on for Black a Dread in the UK, if I am not mistaken. So sad farewell to Clive Hylton. Also in June of this year, June 9th, 2024, Jamaican producer Don Mais passed away. In the 1970s, he ran a record label called Roots Tradition, based in the Greenwich Farm neighborhood of Kingston, Jamaica, along with another label based in the same area, Freedom Sounds. They would have a very local, very collective sort of vibe, working with a close-knit group of artists, using a lot of the same musicians, the Soul Syndicate Band, giving their productions a distinctive sound. And Don Mais and Roots Tradition Records would be one of a number of producers and labels heralding something of a shift in the music from the roots era of the 1970s into the early dancehall stage of the 1980s. Roots Tradition, one of the sort of bridges between those two styles. Don Mais, who also recorded as an artist under the name Ja Bible, would, like Freedom Sounds, use the Soul Syndicate Band, but unlike Freedom Sounds, which leaned towards original rhythm tracks, Don Mais preferred to update old rhythms from the past, a hallmark of the dancehall era, specifically Studio One rhythms. I don't have a massive amount of Roots Tradition in my collection, but Don Mais would catch a number of artists in very early stages of their career. There are a few LPs out on the label with early material by artists like Little John, Toyin. I do have one 7-inch by him here on Roots Tradition. Tracks and Socks by Toyin, produced by Don Mais. Another one would be Sammy Dread, who we caught before his big breakthrough. Michael Prophet, I think, recorded for Don Mais. The label was introduced to me in the 1990s through the Blood and Fire compilation Dub in the Roots Tradition, credited to Scientist, then still a teenager, working for King Tubby at his studio, mixing dubs. Don Mais heard something in Scientist's mixing style and gave a lot of his material to him to mix. In a few years, Scientist would become a headlining star himself, with a high-profile series of dub albums appearing on the Green Sleeves label. But at this point, he was still very much the junior man on the totem pole at King Tubby's studio. This is the original Blood and Fire CD, Dub in the Roots Tradition, Scientist mixing dub tracks of Roots Tradition material, and again, almost exclusively Studio One rhythms. Pick Up the Pieces is on there. The Answer is on there, known for its version by Lone Ranger. The Answer, originally done by Slim Smith as Never Let Go. Big rhythm track from Studio One that was making the rounds again, all over again in the early 1980s, the dancehall era. And that appears as King Tubby's The Answer, but it is Scientist at the controls for this one. Original Blood and Fire, and I also have the vinyl edition of that, which I picked up along the way, though the CD was my original copy. Original Blood and Fire vinyl of Scientist, Dub in the Roots Tradition, 12 tracks on the vinyl, and 15 on the CD. That also came out around the same time, 1996, I believe. Yeah, only the 12th release on Blood and Fire, 1996. But Don Mais issued his own version in Jamaica as King Tubby's The Answer the Dub, with a sleeve by Lamonius. Some hilarious misspellings on the back. Don't know if you can see any of those, but it is basically many of the same tracks as the Blood and Fire release, but that appears on Roots Tradition itself. Don Mais, something of a unsung pioneer in Jamaican music, one of the bridges between the Roots era of the 1970s and the dancehall one of the early 1980s. The summer of 2021 for me was soundtracked in part by a brand new album by a Toronto, Canada area reggae and dub band called the Dub Chronicles, consisting of three brothers, Jonathan, Craig, and Ryan Ratos, all having grown up with a deep love of classic reggae and dub. I'd been linked up with them for a while on social media since an earlier stage of their career when they were known as Chronicles Dub Trio. But in 2019, they reconstituted themselves as the Dub Chronicles with the addition of third brother Ryan on guitar. That year, 2019, brother Jonathan traveled to Africa. The Ratos family had its roots in Goa, India, but the Ratos brothers' parents had also lived in Kenya in the 1970s. So he traveled back there with his girlfriend to visit her family and some of his reconnect with his own background, which was from the same area. And when he got to Kenya, the local Maasai people called him Simba, or lion, on account of his beard and long hair. That started the seeds of an idea which would become the Dub Chronicles' next album, titled Simba, after the Lion King feature, the classic animated feature from Disney, also circulating in his mind. The Dub Chronicles began crafting this album during lockdown of 2021, polishing up their production and instrumental skills in the absence of live gigs at that time. And for the first time, they worked extensively with vocalists. They were primarily an instrumental and live dub band, but for this release, they recorded with two singers, a Toronto area singer, Tash Lorraine, who did a very soulful, very mellow, romantic R&B style song called All Your Days a Breeze, and Jamaican singer Kumar, formerly of the Raging Fire band, who did the mystical Life Force, the Herb Blazing Herbsman, and the Pack Your Bags song, dreaming somewhat of an escape from a season of despair, kind of summing up where people's hearts, where their minds were at following all those months of lockdown. And for me, the album came at a point of low energy, low motivation. The band reached out to me to give the album a listen. Kind of didn't want to at first. I was reluctant, but I did, and it gave me a shot in the arm that I needed, rejuvenation of positive energy, a better mindset, and a refreshing of faith in the power of music to alter your point of view, put an extra spring in your step, as the saying goes. I can still vividly recall driving into the city on a beautiful summer's day in 2021, visiting the record stores again after many long months the year before, going without, and feeling like things are getting back to normal, everything is going to be okay. But the album was digital only, and I did a whole review on it back then. I even did a video on it, but all I had was a digital file to go by. However, 3 years later, the album is now out on vinyl. You can get it on the group's Bandcamp page, the Dub Chronicles, Simba, Return to the Throne, with something of a motif of roots, tradition, continuity, and redemption, some of the similar themes to the Disney film, but inspired also by Jonathan Ratos's trip to Africa. For this album, the group recorded 9 instrumentals, 4 of which would then receive vocals, and then there were further 9 dub versions of all those tracks. It comes out on a beautiful black vinyl edition with custom label. The vocals on there, 4 vocals with instrumentals by the group The King Has Arrived, Simba, Return to the Throne, suitably regal and majestic roots reggae instrumentals. But my favorite was silver lining with something of a steel drum, Caribbean carnival flavor, very joyful, exuberant, conjuring to mind a Caribbean carnival winding its way through the streets on a hot summer's day with a steel drum motif running through it. No Vaccine, capturing some of the tension of the times. Nice to finally have on vinyl. The group had mentioned it at the time that they were planning to have it out on vinyl, but took until 2024 for it finally to be available. Female Jamaican singer Jennifer Lara had been brought to Cox and Dodd's Studio One at 13 Brentford Road in Kingston, Jamaica in the early 1970s by session keyboardist Richard Ace. She would remain there, remain loyal to the label for many years to come, adding harmonies, doing backing vocals, waiting for her chance. She was present as the label was rejuvenated in the late 1970s and early 1980s when its original rhythm tracks made in the 1960s, the early 1970s, became popular all over again through new versions done by other producers, other artists, and Studio One began hitting back with new versions of its own material by upcoming artists such as Sugar Minot, Johnny Osborne, Freddie McGregor, and others, and Jennifer Lara was right there as well. She would do duets with some of those singers, with Freddie McGregor as Freddie and Jenny doing Too Long Will Be Too Late. That can be found on Studio One Lovers from Soul Jazz Records. Oh, longtime favorite of mine, the exuberant Dub Street, came out under the name Johnny, Earl, and Jenny. Johnny is Johnny Osborne, Earl was Earl 16 Daly, and Jennifer Lara doing Dub Street. Had that in my collection for many years in various forms. More recently, it can be found on the #1 sound from the vaults from Heartbeat Records, Dub Street by Johnny, Earl, and Jenny. Eventually, Jennifer Lara would start releasing her own solo singles, covers of pop material like the evergreen Sukiyaki, more romantic leaning and soulful material, but she could also drop a roots masterpiece when required, and perhaps her signature song was Consider Me, very brooding, rootsy, very spiritual. That's been comped many times over the years. I probably first heard it on Feel Like Jumping, the best of Studio One women from Heartbeat Records in 2000, and that includes Consider Me by Jennifer Lara. Finally, around 1981, Studio One would issue her debut LP, Studio One Presents Jennifer Lara, collecting some of her solo singles, though some did not appear on it. something of a classic of perhaps the last great era of Studio One, but out of print for many years until just this year when Studio One dropped a surprise reissue of it in something of their hit and run, grab it while you can marketing technique lately, where they come out with these long sought after gems from their back catalog with little advance warning. Studio One presents Jennifer Lara, originally came out 1981 circa, brand new pressing as of 2024 from the US based Studio One. And this features a slightly different track list, a couple of songs not present on the original, including that signature song Consider Me, here in an alternate mix, along with a couple of other songs, cover of the Byrds' Turn, 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 which was not on the original, and some previously unreleased mixes to spice things up for the longtime collectors. But mainly very soulful, very R&B leaning reggae here, including the very funky Ain't No Love. Finds her very comfortable in a R&B funk milieu. I think they've kind of color corrected the cover art here with the nice color scheme of blue, white, and red, different from some of the washed out looking earlier editions, and very good sound quality on this one for the most part. Studio One presents Jennifer Lara, one of the classics from the last great era of Studio One, back in print again. Jennifer Lara would have to wait until the mid-1980s for her next album, which would appear from Ossie Thomas's Black Solidarity label. I was just talking about Black Solidarity in a previous video with the Ashanti Wah reissue they just put out in the UK, and I just happened to get this right after that Jennifer Lara LP. This is her next album, Weekend Loving, CD reissue from Jam Wax Records, very amorous cover art, front cover by the famed dancehall artist Lemonious, very R&B leaning, very funky on this one, kind of quite an 80s R&B style on this, finding Jennifer Lara moving with the times, very romantic and soulful, leaning funk and soul. Jennifer Lara sadly passed away in 2005, but nice to see some of her back catalog back in print again for a new generation of fans. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today. I've got quite a few reissues have been coming in. It seems like 2024 is off the hook as far as reissues of long out-of-print gems. I've had a number of things coming out that I never thought I would get a chance to own, and then one day, there they are. Just got an order in from Dub Vendor in the UK. Got a couple of other things in the post on their way to me, but They're ones that maybe I will do a dedicated video to those artists. I kind of have enough to do one of those, more or less their entire discographies or the core of their discographies. So maybe it makes more sense to do it that way rather than doing them in a mixed kind of video like this one. So stay tuned for those. Until then, thanks for watching and take care, everyone.